Time to bring on one of my favorite show hosts. That to be in, of course, Irene. She does such a great job, and all along those lines, I'm looking forward to sitting in the background and hearing about these amazing guests that she has, including one that might be talking about the things she's doing that are in the equestrian space, and all along those lines. But definitely glad to be here with you, Irene. You always have an amazing show with amazing guests, and all along those lines, I'm going to turn it over to you. But I'll be sitting in the background and keeping things running, and all along those lines. But as always, you have a great show here, and you are always a person that I consider to be a fellow activist, because I definitely am in that activist space. So anytime that I have to be in the company of folks that are making sure that people are doing right and being treated right, always at that of that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, but you are doing a great job with this show, and I know that usually our good friend Kim would be introducing you and all along those lines, but she's got some things she's got to take care of and all along that kind of space. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you bring in these amazing guests.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. And today, Kim is in the hospital recovering from surgery. She did the show last Monday, and then the next day learned that she would have to have unexpected surgery that took place this past Friday. And we just wish her the best. I've always said I can't do this show without her, but if anyone would say the show must go on, it's Kim Calhoun. So we have as our guest today, Andre from Volca. And Andre, you let me know if you hear some construction noise behind me, and I'll mute myself and let you talk. We're having some pretty loud construction going on here today. But Andre is with Volca, and I'll be talking in a minute about my resort co-op that my husband and I signed up for, and we couldn't be happier. The two goals of this show are to educate and inform, and part of that is allowing our guests to can you hear that?
No, it's actually fairly quiet. Hello everyone. Hey Irene.
Yes, I can hardly hear myself think right now, so I might be in the background myself. You can't hear it?
No.
Okay, well that's wonderful. Yeah. I'll just get a headache myself then. So Heather is with us in an ongoing, and Heather, as I said before you came on, we want to educate and inform and let people share their stories if they have experienced unfair and deceptive practices. One of the most common is being told that you could rent to pay for itself if something happens. And since that's not so easy to do, you are in a long line of people that have had that complaint, including our board member, Sherida. Sherida has been battling Vacation Village for about 3 years now. And we hope that things are going to change. But right now, they've been acquired by Vacacia, and we're going to talk more about that. Finally, we have our equestrian guest today, Lori. And Lori has given up on Hilton. We have tried to have her make the best of it, and she has tried to make the best of it. So I'm going to start though, Andre, so you focus on the good side of timeshare. And as I said, my resort co-op, I'll go into a little bit more detail about it, but I booked my first trip with my 48,000 RCI points, a 3-year program that avoids the perpetual timeshare contract that everybody complains about because of so little resale and so many resorts with no responsible exit. So I booked my first trip with the help of Jonathan, that's been on our show as a co-host the last 3 or 4 episodes, Vacation Ownership Advisor. And I used 22,000 of my RCI points to book Cape Canaveral on the beach in Florida. And the total cost that included a 243 exchange fee and about 500 for my points was a total of $869. So then I went to booking.com the same week, the same resort, same unit, $1,919 plus $243. So if Heather and Lori are committed to defaulting, they cannot continue. This is a viable option that may or may not be appropriate for their families. So Heather, let's start with you. How did you end up in a Wyndham presentation, and what went wrong, and how did you end up here today?
Well, thank you for having me. And prior to my husband and I getting married, we bought a book VIP vacation to the Dominican Republic, which was pre-COVID, and our wedding was delayed because of COVID. So finally, I've been holding on to this vacation for a long time because my husband didn't want to go to the DR. So one day I said, let's go to Vegas. We haven't been there in a long time. And so I called Book VIP, switched over our vacation from 3 days to 4 days, and went to Vegas and extended it on both ends. And so that's how we got into the presentation. We've been to presentations in the past, never purchased anything. So we were like, yeah, we can always say no, like we've always said. And this time, for some reason, we said yes, and did not know about the rescission period of 5 days that we were actually on vacation and in Vegas. And I also had bilateral pneumonia. So it was already in the process while I was there. So I never looked at the contract, never even thought about the contract again while I was there because I was sick and wanted to get home and I was on vacation. So it was just a combination of things. So that's how we got into Wyndham. And it was, we bought a timeshare 13 years ago with Global Discovery Vacations. We never have paid a maintenance fee. We only pay a maintenance fee if we use it. We mentioned that at the Wyndham presentation and said that's why we've never used a timeshare. That's why we don't want another timeshare. Our sales agent left, came back with another agent, and they said, well, we'll give you X amount of dollars off of a Wyndham timeshare.
Well, and that X amount of dollars was $18,000.
$18,000.
And Andre, they did not take the timeshare back from her.
Yeah.
So, and let me go ahead and your purchase price, so we know what we're talking about. You purchased 126,000 Club Wyndham points for 40,000.
No.
Okay.
21,000. 21,000.
Well,
21,600.
the high price was 40,000, and then the $18,500 discount. So what I do is I go and look and see. One person recently bought 105,000, and one person bought 200,000, and in no way would 126,000 points justify a purchase price of 40,000. In the auto industry, it's called price packing. Where it's artificially inflated. Okay, so go ahead, and it went downhill from there.
So we questioned at least 5 times what would happen if there was a change in income or somebody got sick or we weren't using it, we weren't traveling. And we were told not to mention this when we received a follow-up call and not to mention this in the closing, that there was a certified exit program. And don't say that because Wyndham doesn't want to think that you will just turn around and exit the program. And we asked several, probably 5 times as well. Okay, you're telling us it's going to cost us $118. And we talked about it by ourselves. And after we had asked all these times, is this really what it's going to cost us? We're like, okay, we can afford $60 a piece a month to be able to pay for this, because I had written down all of the vacations that I have planned in the fall. I knew how much all of my reservations were going to cost me. And we did the math, and I was like, okay, we're going to come out ahead by $2,000 by us booking at Wyndham. We were told that we could use our points to just go for 2 nights, Manhattan, Texas, I can't remember. Oh, Miami. So I said, okay, this is going to save us money. Okay, let's keep talking about it. And we said, okay, if it's only going to cost us $120 a month, we'll do it. What if we can't fit it? The salesperson said, well, I will teach you how to pay for your fees.
I was hearing some kind of typing.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sure
That was me. That was me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
They said, I will teach, I, being the sales agent, will teach you, A, how to use your points to pay for your fees. B, I will be your concierge. So anytime you want to book, call me. I will help you book. I will also give you a link to get discounted airfare. And I didn't really think that that was legit, but I don't need that anyway, so I wasn't ever going to use it. And so we just kept, we were just so hesitant. But because they had told us that, yes, there was certified exit, they never told us it was a perpetual contract, because they said, oh, your kids will be able to use this. And we said, well, we don't have children, so it doesn't matter. So we just kind of blew that off, not thinking it was perpetual. And we honestly thought, they told us we would be VIPs for 5 years. So we thought after 5 years, we were done, with an option to extend for another 5 years as VIPs. And at that time, so we'll say 10 years, if we didn't want to use it, we would be done. We in no way understood that this was a perpetual contract. We also didn't understand this was an HOA. I was in HOA management for 18 years. Had I even known there were governing documents, this would have been another trigger for me to say, absolutely not, because I know what that means. And we didn't know this was a mortgage. We did not know this was a real estate transaction. When we were in closing, I didn't even know it was closing at the time. Right now, I understand that it was a real estate transaction. Had no idea. And what they did is they divided the rest of the down payment onto 2 credit cards. They applied for 2 credit cards for us through the Barclays Wyndham card. And that's what triggered all of this landslide, is when I got our first credit card statement, is when I finally said, oh my God, we don't just owe this $120. We also owe the cost of the credit card, which is what I had asked 5 or 6 times, is this $120 going to be what is on our credit card? And I, not knowing, I thought, okay, maybe they were billing us $60 a piece. I didn't know. So I called the salesperson, and I texted her. She texted me back and said, oh, I'm busy, but I'll get back to you today. I texted her 2 days later and said, hey, you didn't text me back. I'm freaking out. We cannot afford this. This is not what you said. Please call me back. Don't worry, I'll get back to you. She, of course, never followed up. I called at least 2 people at them, and they kept sending me to someone else and someone else. So
this was the Wyndham Cares department you were calling?
I called the finance department. I don't really know who I was calling. And sales agents were calling me to say, oh, let me help you use your book your first reservation. that's when I found out that where we wanted to go in British Columbia, I couldn't book 13 months out like I was told. I had to wait till July. When I wanted to use my points to go to Manhattan, my points, the one night in Manhattan was almost 3 times the points that we get in an entire year.
Wow.
There were none in Dallas and there were none in Lincoln. So all of that was going out the window, realizing that I couldn't use it. Then I was told, oh, well, you're going to have housekeeping fees. Never knew we were going to have housekeeping fees. So as time went on, or actually on that same day that I got our credit card bills and started calling the sales agent, she didn't respond. On the third day, I reached out to an attorney and they said, well, you can apply for a chargeback. I don't know if you're going to get it, but you can. So that's what I did, is I wrote a letter and I applied for a chargeback on both of the credit cards, which were almost $11,000 on each card. At this point, both of us have zero balances on those credit cards. We have canceled those credit cards. And I personally have started receiving collection calls from Wyndham because I had a chargeback. So they're saying, since you did a chargeback on the credit card, now you owe us this money. My husband doesn't answer. He hasn't gotten any of these calls, but he has a zero balance on the credit card. So we went ahead and
Did you get charged back on 2 cards?
2 cards.
Okay. And as far as the hidden fees that you're talking about, effective May 12th of 2025, the Federal Trade Commission issued a new rule on hidden fees, and it applies to live event ticketing and short-term lodging industries. Now, they mentioned specifically Airbnb and VRBO, but they also said temporary sleeping accommodations, hotel, motel, short-term rental, vacation rental, or other places of lodging. Now, why can't they just say timeshare? It didn't say that. So, Lori, are you hearing anything? Let Andre know about your problems with availability that you've had with Hilton, and the research that you've done, despite the fact that there are Facebook groups with 40,000 Wyndham owners that are happy and 30 or 40,000 Hilton owners that are happy. So sometimes what's right for one family isn't going to be right for another family, which is why we want to promote a viable secondary market. So Lori, was anything Heather saying ringing any bells?
Yeah, I heard most of this. Why I had to change to my computer. I could barely hear on my phone. I thought, oh, I'll just use my phone from down here at the barn and this will be great, but I couldn't hear you. And all you were going to hear was my chickens if I turned. So I'm back at my house. But the problem that I have is not the problem a lot of people complain about, not being able to find bookings that they can use. I can find bookings that I can use. They're not in places I want to go. And I told the sales agents that we aren't typical resort travelers when we were at the presentation, and they assured us we'd have a variety of places all over the US and Europe and Mexico that we would be able to use. The problem is that it's really hard for me to find RCIs to string together in the way that I travel. And so that's not real viable. And what Heather said about the value if you use the hotels is just terrible. I can convert my points into about 2 nights worth of hotels in a city like London or Paris that I would travel to, and then they would cost me roughly $1,000 a night when I convert my points cost. I've never, even in Paris or London or New York, had to pay $1,000 a night for a hotel. Usually it's expensive if it's much more than 200.
Now, RCI, Wyndham purchased RCI, and Hilton is affiliated with RCI.
Yeah, I can use RCI.
Yeah. So are you talking about
most of the time I find places that are way far away from hotels, or they might be lovely places to stay for a week, but that's just not what I do. Like, for example, right now I'm looking at a possible trip to Europe for next year, flying into Barcelona, traveling to Marseille, France, with 2 or 3 stops in between. I'm not going to find anything in VRBO that's going to work to do that. It's not gonna work.
One question I have though, when you talked about the poor value, were you talking about converting your Hilton timeshare points?
To Hilton Honors. Yeah, that's how they tricked me into showing me all of these multitudes of locations all across Europe that I could use. They oh no, you have, they do this map thing. They'll go, here's the Hilton resorts. And then they lay a transparency over the top of it and go, here's all the VRBO, not VRBO, the RCI locations that you can use. And then, there's more dots. And here's all of the Hilton Honors that you can use and hundreds more dots. And so I was like, oh, well, this would actually work. And then when we do want to do the resorts, which we sometimes do every 3 or 5 years, maybe, we could use them there. Then they showed us the extra vacations through RCI. We could use those once in a while. I mean, when they work in, but then your points expire and there's fees to push them into future years and fees for this and fees for that. And so it just becomes this headache, and it's very backward vacation planning from what I usually do. I find a deal on airfare, jump on that, and then I find the hotels that get us to where I want to go. So.
And how do the Hilton timeshare points relate to the RCI points? Are they one and the same?
I think so.
Andre, do you know?
I haven't done it yet, so.
I'm not
but
sure.
It costs a fee to convert.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it'll show you what they convert at. I'm not sure how they would convert from.
Yeah, a
Hilton.
fee to convert from Hilton timeshare points RCI. Yeah. And Sherida is stuck. So she's not in the market for a new program because we'll have you finish up the tales of timeshare tragedies. But Andre, go ahead and explain. I don't know if we can see this, that I read the fine print on this. But I signed up for the 48,000, and then the middle level is 72,000. And so there's 3 different tiers, and I'm pretty sure this is too small of a print to read, but that is a little bit of a nutshell. Go ahead and explain your background and how you ended up with Volca, the difference between Volca, My Resort Co-op, and there's an MVP program that I think is Interval International sister to the RCI program, if I've got that right.
Yep. Okay, so let me kind of address what I was hearing from Heather and Lori. And a quick thing. So you showed these prices, and the one thing I want to make a note, you can go on Volca.com and see all the prices. We tried our best to explain the pricing model for what you're buying the best you can. Because when I was listening to Heather, it's kind of interesting that I noticed that out of about 10 minutes of conversation, I think you mentioned the actual product scenario, probably like 30 seconds. Well, I tried booking in New York and it didn't work. So 10 minutes had nothing to do with the product that you were trying to buy. It had everything to do with the sales process, with the all the confusion about it, everything, unclarity and so forth. I mean, in my mind, that's kind of like, and I'm sure right now it's 10 minutes of conversation and it's hours of your time you're spending on everything but actually using the product you bought. In my mind, that's not a very good experience. And like you mentioned, Irene, that there's a lot of Wyndham groups that say they love Wyndham. My family a long time ago purchased a Wyndham Vacation Club, and we really, really liked the travels and we used it correctly, but we did a lot of research ahead of time. It seems now that there's a lot of kind of opportunity for, I guess, these intermediary groups that go and help sell the products and so forth, and they add a lot of confusion. That's why I called it out. Like all the prices you showed, it's all on Volca.com. We don't hide our prices. We try and calculate it out for you, so that that's what it is. Of course, there's also our points, and I'll get into the product then a bit. But yeah, let me then take a step back. So what My Resort Co-op is, we partnered with a very well-known gentleman in the industry, Joe Takis. He was on your show, I believe, Irene. And he has an opportunity. He's working with both the exchange companies, with RCI and II, with 2 different products, My Resort Co-op and My MVP Club. And the idea is that with him, we're selling these kind of 3-year term kind of vacation clubs. You get a certain allocation of points and you go use them with either the RCI or II, and they both have their own individual sets of inventory. Sometimes it overlaps, and they're great individually, like their own systems, their own networks. When we sat down to look through it, for me, what the most important thing was that, okay, one, I really like that it's 3 years, kind of you can go ahead, try it. You're not committed for a really long time. Two, I really wanted to make sure that if a person's buying it, it's like, okay, well, yes, I understand what the points cost me, so that whenever I'm on RCI, I can compare. As Irene, you mentioned at the start of this call, you're like, well, my points cost me this. The reason you're able to say my points cost me this is because you go Volca.com and see what the points cost you. So you know exactly what the cost is for. You don't have to go and figure it out somewhere, everything. The one thing we can't directly show, obviously, is the pricing that RCI or II updates, because they do it variable, so you'll have to have a membership to do it and see the pricing. We tried showing a couple blog posts to explain some of the deals, and there's no guarantee you're going to find exactly what you're looking for at the exact deal you want, but there's a guarantee you can find a really good deal of something that you really enjoy traveling and using. There's also another program that RCI does. I think II might have similar, where they, instead of just within their network, which is 4,200 hotels, resorts, they also partner with a kind of external hotel network and allow you to use some of your points there. They cap it at 2,000 points a night, and that gets converted to a discount. And oftentimes, you get a better discount than the cost of the points, so that's good. But hopefully that briefly explains the program. But the bottom line is, Heather, I'm sorry you went through that experience. I do, because Irene also asked me how I got into it, and this is a bit ties into that. I do believe that there's a lot of benefit to the basis of the industry, to the core of the industry. It does make sense on paper. I mean, that's what effectively captivates us when we're trying to go through the sale process. In the end, you're like, yes, it does make sense on paper, but there's so much additional on top of it that it's like, I would rather want to see everything. And when we looked into the industry, it was actually a friend of mine, Taylor, we worked with before, now my partner in Volca. We kind of had a call and we said, you know what? We're thinking about doing something interesting. I thought about the timeshare industry. I thought about this blockchain stuff. And I think we can do something really, really interesting industry to digitize ownership. That's how I kind of got in. There's a bit of teasing. We can elaborate on that. But yeah, just going to wrap up with a Marzar quote briefly. And Lori, to your point, I don't know exactly how Wyndham points and Hilton, like I said, translate. The RCI points are simple. You just whatever RCI was bought by Wyndham, you have access to some of the Wyndham properties in their inventory. You have some of the Hilton, and you have a bunch of other ones. And then you have the hotel program of 600,000, but you only can use 2,000 points per. It's like a discounted. And then you got cruises. And one quick thing, Irene, by the way, if you ever want to go on a cruise with RCI, you can either book online, but if you call in, they also allow you to use, I believe, up to 6,000 or 12,000 points. Don't quote me somewhere on Volca.com, but if you call them in, they allow you to use points as well for a very, very good discount over top of booking online. So.
And what is your background, Andre, that led you to this venture? Is it IT basically,
yes.
or?
Yeah, I'm a tech guy. I used to work in Microsoft. I used to work on a fantastic product called HoloLens. It was a lot of fun. It was like augmented reality. You put a device on your head, you see a hologram in front of you. You can pick it up and show it to somebody else and so forth. It was phenomenal. And then we worked on another equally slightly different audience product with Facebook at that time. Now Meta was Quest VR. So I was always into this tech, and it was always fascinating to me to see where the world is going. And then I was watching to see what would happen with the blockchain, because right now the blockchain has a lot of promise, right? It's the first real way you can digitally own something yourself. For example, if I digitally own something and I have my private key and a USB key, I can transfer ownership by just literally giving that USB key to someone else. I can't do that with any other form of digital ownership, right? I can't give someone else my debit card and all of a sudden they own my bank account. But if I have my crypto and my USB key, that's it. You're now the owner. And that is unique. And I was waiting to see when it would start going mainstream. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of over the past, let's say, 6-7 years. I mean, there were several waves. About the past 6-7 years, a lot of groundwork and foundational stuff was being laid in. Yes, there's a lot of cryptocurrencies, and that's not what we're talking about. There's like a lot of art and NFT, and we use the technology, but we're also not into like the artistic effect of it. But in the past several years, we started having a lot of mainstream companies to start going and looking at integrating with the blockchain. Visa started doing a test with Solana 2 years ago, I believe. This digital ownership, it's definitely going to be the future. I was curious which industry would be the most impactful, and I do believe it's the timeshare industry that will be the most impactful for. And I can elaborate on that. But
I think we're headed toward your conversation about tokenization of timeshare, and I've heard it explained twice, but we've got some pretty smart people here with us today with Heather and Sheridan and Lori that go ahead and explain what tokenization is, and I know it applies to real estate in general and how it would apply to timeshare.
Well, yeah. In short, so tokenization is basically digitizing ownership. So that you can, the way I explained that you can have your ownership and full control over it. And quick step back, it's just, tech mind always races ahead, but the blockchain is basically a public ledger that people can write to and read from. It's a lot of set of rules to make sure that only the right authorized transactions can be performed. So there's no duplicate transactions, there's no invalid transactions or fraudulent ones. And transactions meaning transfer of ownerships, transfer of tokens, and so forth. And the idea is that if you encode ownership of something, including, let's say, a timeshare deed on the blockchain, you're protected by this set of protection from fraud or issues with the transfers. But two, anyone can verify the authenticity of ownership as well. So
Would this replace deeds?
It would effectively, yeah, it would tie to them. So before I get into that detail, let me just take one step back and actually address the problem we're solving, because this is the interesting thing. Because I mean, timeshare has been around for what, since 70s, 80s is when it really started picking up in US. And we struggled for a long time to go and create a true powerful secondary marketplace akin to Airbnb, right? I mean, Airbnb came out and effectively said you can rent your house when you go on vacation. And there was like some kind of process, but it created a platform and it grew massively. And a lot of people started renting out their house when they go on vacation. With timeshares, the question was, and I believe that was one of the founding things that Koala was saying as well, is that why can't we create a platform the same as Airbnb? Why does it have to be this complicated process? And Red Week does a lot of effort to make it simplified. And that question was kind of in my mind for a really long time. And I tried to figure out the answer. Well, I realized what it is. So let's say, Irene, if I want to rent your house, I'm a guest, you're the person who wants to rent the house. I can create a platform, Airbnb. We both sign up. Great. I rent your house. If let's say, for example, Heather, let's say I'm an Uber driver, or I have a car, I want to drive for money, and you want a rider. We create an Uber app. Great. 2 people sign up, find the riders, find the drivers, and great. With timeshares, you can't really do that. The reason why is because if you, let's say, Lori or Sherda, you want a timeshare deed and you want to rent it out to me, or you want to sell it to me. Well, one, I'm not because it's such a good, right? So it's once a year, let's say if it's a fixed timeshare, it's a week, you rent out once a year. Reviews won't really be helpful. On Airbnb, after a month of bad reviews, Airbnb will just say, this is fraud, and it'll close the account and refund or whatever. With timeshares, it's once a year, so it'll be only one review per year. So there's nothing to really go with there. So that's why I got to verify, and the platform has to verify. But they can't just come talk to you. They got to go talk to the resort. And they can't do it in a systematic way. They got to call the resort or figure out that, yes, Lori, you actually own this timeshare and you want to rent it or you want to sell it. And that's manual. You cannot automate it. 2, if Irene, you rent your house out and you get a booking, you say, okay, cool, done, I accept, booking confirmed. You don't have to go call anybody else. If you have a timeshare, Lori, and you rent it out, then you got to go call the resort and say, hey, what forms do you need? This is a person that's coming. They tell you, oh, we're missing information. And you go back to the guest, well, this is what we need, and so forth. And that back and forth becomes a bit kind of, it's a lot of paperwork. And again, it's not a very automated process. So what I'm getting to is that in every single transaction between two people, a guest and an owner, or buyer and a seller, there's always a third party that is not directly involved in the platform, and that's the resort. It's not going to register with the resort, and it will have to participate through paperwork, through notifications, through all sorts of stuff. And that's the problem we're solving with tokenization. Because to that point where if you can bring your crypto to any exchange company, and they don't have to verify you own the crypto, because your private key is the only account that can actually make a transfer. So no one has to verify it. So with a tokenized timeshare deed, you're the only person that can actually list it for sale, for example, and approve the sale. And the resort knows there'll be a sale facilitated because they'll see the transfer of ownership. So you eliminate all this paperwork steps and you automate it. That's the problems we're solving, and that's kind of the basis of what we're building, and we're launching soon, actually.
Is that primarily for independent resorts or the big brand timeshare points, Wyndham, Blue Green? Is it points or is it the resorts itself, the brick and mortar?
We want to start with the basics. We want to take an independent resort that has fixed deeds, and we want to improve their ownership experience for their owners through this tokenized deeds, through this digitized deeds. It also removes a lot of fees, right? Because that's the other thing is you no longer have to do a title search because all the information is digitally available. You know exactly who owns it, if there's any liens on it, and whatever else happens. So we want to eliminate various costs. We want to eliminate the process. We want to make it simple. We want to allow, and we want to do it in a fashion of an open ecosystem. So we allow other service providers, including marketplaces like Redweek, Koala, whoever else, to also improve their customers' experience by simply relying on this digital platform and making sure all the processes are straightforward. And we are aiming at the independent resorts. And the most important thing is we're not creating a vacation club. So the independent resort remains independent within this open ecosystem. The deeds are, you can always, the owner of the token can always take the deed out if they want to. That's the number one thing. It's the tie between the deed and the token that we're trying to facilitate and digitize.
Well, and Sherida, since you work in Marriott resales, say I have a Marriott, a fixed week that I have in Aruba. What is the process that you would take me through to be able to sell it? And then Andre, you can compare what it would be like with tokenization.
Yeah, I guess my first question is, Marriott has right of first refusal. So how does that work with tokenization? Because Marriott can, if Irene had somebody who wants to buy her Aruba, we have to do all the paperwork and we have to submit it to Marriott, and then they decide if they want to buy it instead.
Right. We work with every resort independently. And if there's rights of first refusal requirements, then they would automatically, as soon as the person places what's called the offer to sell, they can choose at that point, or they can wait until the sale comes in and they'll get a notification. And for them, it'll be basically effectively yes or no, buy it or no. But the whole point is to standardize and digitize that so that the process remains very, very simple for the services that provide the service, right? For example, if we that is an issue that's technically handleable between the owner and the resort. The buyer might get, well, unfortunately, this order or sale has been rescinded by the resort. That's it. But the platform that does the facilitation, like Red Week or Koala, they don't really need to concern themselves with that, right? That's the system, that's the open ecosystem that we're building up. That's at the level of the token. The servers on the top, all they want to do is deliver a fantastic experience where buyers can find sellers and great the exchange, and yeah.
So Marriott would still receive notification that it was changing hands though, and they could still exercise their right of first refusal?
Yes, and here's the best part. It will be encoded into the actual rules of the transfer of the token, and they won't be able to be circumvented. That's so whatever the rules are for the owner that are written into their either the governing documents or whatever agreement they have with their resort, those rules will be enforced in the token. So it makes it simple, it makes it clean, and that if they're for the resort, the benefit is that great. If they want to do it, they'll always exercise it. For the owner, for the buyers, they always know it's a clean process, because if the process completes, that means all the rules have been followed. Like Heather, you mentioned, oh my God, there's governing docs. Why is it that a person buying something has to care if governing docs have been followed during the buying process, right? One, it has to be clear what they are, but two, you shouldn't care if the seller has followed them. It should be part of the process. And if we can enforce it digitally at that sale transaction, and uniquely like curated per resort, per the instructions, then great. It makes the whole process simpler.
And when I first got into this and I found out my points had no resale value whatsoever, I surveyed 55 licensed timeshare resale brokers, members of the Licensed Timeshare Resale Broker Association. And most of them, if I wanted to say rent or sell, would place that ad on Red Week. And the advantage of going through Shareda instead of me doing that is there's all these scammers out there, including the Mexican cartel, surfing those ads. Whereas if I'm going through Shareda, it's just like if I have working with a real estate agent to sell my house as opposed to a for sale by owner. Go let Andre know since Arivia has purchased Red Week, there's a number of brokers that are now angry. Maybe Andre and Taylor can come up with a Red Week alternative.
Or work with Red Week to make Red Week better, right? That's the whole point of the open ecosystem, because we're trying to digitize the ownership and everyone to build on top of it.
Explain what they've been doing recently that have made life more difficult for people that are trying to be able to sell resorts without charging an upfront fee. You function like a traditional real estate agent.
Well, actually, it's the rental platform on Red Week that's changed a lot. It's every ad has to be verified and protected, which is fine for the one who wants to rent. Then they know that it's an actual reservation. There is an actual reservation, but they charge us $99 if there's a success. If somebody rents it, that's called a success fee of $99. Then besides what I would charge for our rentals, for instance, if I charge $4,000 for a week, Red Week attaches another $400 plus onto that amount for the tenant to pay for their paperwork. Red Week for them to do their paperwork. So it's getting very hard to rent weeks because the prices are astronomical. People don't want to pay those prices. Sometimes we're able to, some of our ads, if we don't rent something 10 days before check-in, then Red Week drops the protected, verified portion of the ad, and then we can work directly with the tenant at that time. And then they drop their 10%, and it goes back to what we charge. So it's causing a lot of problems, and it's making brokers mad.
Well, and we really want to warn people, if you're going to buy a timeshare, to avoid Vacation Village at all costs. Sherida, you've been through
Yeah.
a total nightmare with them, but it was bad enough before. There was no responsible exit unless you had debilitating medical condition. And very little to no resale. You can look on Red Week for Grandview and they're listed for 0.
Yep.
Tell everybody that Facebook post of somebody that attempted to rent through Vacation.
Vacation. Yep. A gal, this was on Vacation Village Owners Group, which you would think would be, they had all kinds of pictures, happy families in their pictures, just post after post. But when I was going through the posts, then I read somebody had written, "Do not let Vacation rent your unit." They're at, let's see here. I can't even read my own writing. They charge, this person used to get $250 a night for her unit before Vacation took over renting. And last year she only got $30 a night because they take all the units that don't rent and they subsidize the unit and causing her to get only $30 a night. And her unit was an oceanfront. All the other units were just garden view or
She described them as dumpster views.
Yeah. So Vacation is not the way to go to rent your unit either.
Yeah, and if you have a 4-bedroom home and the kids move out, you don't need to prove medical hardship to sell your house. And to just deliberately stifle the secondary market. I mean, TARDA and Lori and Sherida are both on our board, serve alongside me, just constant complaints about no responsible exit. And they liken it to the house you live in, just find a buyer, but there's a glut. And when you add the deceptive sales on top of it, then it becomes a complete nightmare. So, and I also want to mention that your partner, Taylor, about a year ago, the power of networking and member supporting members is so powerful. So when Judy Kozlowski, who she works very specialized in Hilton resales. She does others too, but she's kind of my go-to for Hilton. And she said, "Hey, you ought to talk to these two guys, Andre and Taylor. They have this idea." And I did, and I thought, I know this guy. He has a PhD in finance, and he's been in the timeshare industry 43 years. And about, I'd say 6 months later, my resort co-op was born, and my MVP club. And is the difference between my resort co-op and MVP, is that just one's RCI and one's II? You mentioned there was some kind of overlap.
Yeah, one is RCI, one is II. I believe there's some overlap between those networks in terms of resorts they cater to. As far as I understand, some resorts work with both, but that's all I mentioned. But yeah, they're two unique different networks, and it's my resort co-op for RCI, my MVP club for II.
And Sherida, have you heard any pluses or minuses? What's the difference between II and RCI? They're both exchange, points-based exchange deposits, but
Yeah,
plus or
basically,
minuses.
I've just heard that II has more choices than RCI. I've never used RCI, so I can't say from experience, but that is what I've heard, is that II has a broader range of choices.
Right.
But true,
And so with Heather and Lori, Heather, I'm very leery of arbitration because there's been some negative rulings. The worst was a family disputing $5,000 that lost in arbitration and were ordered to pay $95,000. But I thought that you had such a compelling report. We had on our show a few weeks ago, Jay Kumar of, and I don't have his episode, but it was just in June, we had him on the show doing a mass arbitration and explained. So you did, I said, well, it doesn't cost anything to file the questionnaire out. So you did that. Can you explain, how you came to that decision to go ahead and arbitrate this dispute?
Yes. So I filled out the form and I sent in my contract, sent in the letters that I sent to Barclays to dispute the charges. Also sent them the letter that I had sent to Wyndham Cares. So everything that I have, I sent to them. He wrote me back and said, here's the options for the mass arbitration if you want to join on. Here's what it costs, flat fee of $750. If we get money back for you, it's X amount. But since you haven't given them any money, based on the fact that we think, or we have been given chargebacks, that's $0 that we have given them. And then I said, well, can we talk on the phone? Because I'm so nervous. And so he jumped on a call with me, and it turned out what he said is, I'm going to do a pre-filing. Let's put your name on the pre-filing, and maybe they'll just forgive you from the contract, and then you don't even have to go to arbitration. But he's told me, he said, don't tell them you're going to arbitrate, because if you do, they could turn around and just say, well, okay, we'll go ahead and sue you. So I'm doing it as part of this mass arbitration.
Well, and that was episode 63. If somebody wants to learn more about that, he did a great job in explaining that. And Wyndham, I attended a 5-day trial, and they do not, well, it was 2022, I believe, so things can change, but their lead witness said they do not sue on the promissory note. Now, think about it. If you had a $30,000 timeshare loan and you default, it's worth nothing to you. The resort can take it back and sell it tomorrow for $30,000 and then turn around and sue you on the promissory note, doubling their money. You know, if it was a house and you had, you defaulted on a $200,000 loan and they sold it for $250,000, they'd owe you some money. No other product works like this. So Orange Lake Holiday Inn, I know they filed about a dozen lawsuits like that, and they were never successful. And then not Wyndham, it was Hilton filed against a law firm that they were involved in litigation. So in other words, they were using you as a pawn to punish the law firm because the law firm did not charge anything extra to defend. What a product. Okay, so we'll be following along with that, Heather. And you know, it's my reputation is on the line. If I suggest somebody, we rarely refer to attorneys, but if you don't have the time or temperament to self-advocate, then we have attorneys that we can refer to, and law firms refer to us, people they can't provide services. So Lori, let's go back to you. Have you just completely given up on timeshare? I'm looking for somebody to go through my resort co-op on the buddy system with me, but I don't know if somebody that backpacks through Europe, if that's the appropriate product.
That's the whole thing, is like, I have a whole long list of vacations that are nowhere near a resort. It doesn't mean once in a while I don't enjoy a resort. I told you we went to Maui Bay a month ago and it was nice. But that's just not what I want to do every year. And what I told them when I bought, you know, like I said before, I got tricked into the variety. It wasn't that I don't like the resorts and that I can't find value. It's that I just don't, there's not enough variety. There's not enough places. It's too hard to find bookings close to what I want to do. So I pretty much
the value, based on that comment, I found such great value booking my first resort. We had an when we had Taylor on the show, we had this and again, the print is probably too small, but that was comparing hotel. It's not like Hilton, and when you use your Hilton points for hotels, you get very poor value. With RCI, if Lori wanted to book, I'm sure you have to book hotels in between your backpacking and when you land.
Hotels in little bitty dusty towns in southern France. It's just it just doesn't work for my style of travel, unless it is the odd year where I decide to go to Hawaii. So
Yeah.
or Cabo.
And
My son's going to use our Hilton product in Cabo this year, and I think at that point I'm just going to try to get out of it. I've got about 4,000 points. I can pay the $200 fee to push to next year, and maybe that'll sweeten the pot for somebody who'll want to take it off my hands. I don't know.
well, and I think what's really sad is that timeshare can be a really great industry. And,
It
you know,
can be
I
wonderful.
think,
If they had some cooperation between the HOAs and, in this case, Hilton, in other cases, Wyndham or whatever, to make sure that the owners aren't paying more than, a random person that books from the website too. That was one of the things that I ran into, and we talked about in a different episode. I spent about 3 or 4 days back in January pricing. I picked just a few random weeks and priced them on Hilton.com and versus the timeshare cost of my points. And about 60% of the time I could book it cheaper without the timeshare. And to my way of thinking, if I've paid $20,000 to these people, I should get a discount, but I don't.
well, and we also have to issue in a disclaimer that Diamond Resorts U.S. collection, Hilton bought Diamond and Blue Green, and Blue Green is even worse, that they do not allow renting. Diamond rules specifically say U.S. collection, you cannot rent to anyone you don't know, and you cannot use a third-party platform. And Tom, who has been on our show, retired 23 years with the Baltimore County Police Department, Heather. He was he had I think 500,000 Wyndham points over 20 years. He loved Wyndham. And they then said, oh, you should, most people at your level, they buy points to rent. And he attempted to rent on, and the extra holidays and vacation share that they recommended, they really don't work. We had Megan on the show, episode 36, October 28th, 2024. Don't worry about your husband, a Marine, being deployed to a combat zone. You can rent it out and it'll pay for itself. So then he goes to another update and they said, oh yeah, no, they don't work very well. Call this company. And he did. The guy used to work for Wyndham. It worked. He was able to offset about 30% of his fees for renting. Got issued a cease and desist letter accusing him of commercial activity. So, you just make sure you check with your resort to make sure that renting is allowed. So this is ongoing situation. Sherida, you've been following me since I first heard about this, and I was pretty confused in the beginning, but now I'm getting the gist of it. So I got help with Jonathan to book my trip, my first trip, but I'm going to try on my own to look at RCI by the next show. The last Monday of every month, we want to be more proactive and positive and going forward with timeshares and promoting the secondary market. So any last words from you, Andre, before looks like we have another 2 minutes to sign off.
For me, it's simple. I think the underlying timeshare product could be a really good product. I think the future is going to be bright. We're working very hard to try and bring this digital ownership. And I know I'm not even saying this. I've noticed I'm not promoting the right now resorts we're going to be launching at all. I'm hoping to give a bit of hope into the future, because I do believe if we get rid of a lot of problems, a lot of the process and a lot of the fees, we create something cleaner, and it's going to be a much more exciting future for the timeshare industry.
Yeah, and I'm also going to disclaim that I am not making a penny on this. I've been accused of trying to, promote this program for some selfish reason, but I just think it's a really great program. And especially at our age, the last thing we need, people that are older, 65 or older, 70, 75, you need to do your timeshare math. We have people 75 and older signing off on $100,000 timeshare contracts, and that's just not prudent. So Mark, thanks again for being behind the scenes, and we want to wish Kimberly Calhoun a successful recovery. So
Can I
there's
get
3
y'all on out of here?
producers.
I just got one quick question for you, Irene, and everything, because like I mentioned before, my mom was one of the founders of Black Issues Forum. So next year they're going to celebrate 40 years of that show. So it'll be season 40.
Wow.
So I'm wondering, are you going to have and she's not been the host. She was one of the early hosts, and there's another woman that is hosting the show now. So maybe you'll pass it on, and maybe this Timeshare show will also have 40 episodes, because it is a North Carolina PBS show that she was one of the founders of several years back and everything. But they're going to be celebrating their 40th season. So I want to know, we're going to have 40 years of Timeshare Solution or Surrender. That's where I was going.
I thought it would be a miracle if I lasted a year, and now I'm on week 70. So it's bringing people together in a way that's never happened before. Thank you, everybody.
You're on year 2, and maybe you'll be heading to year 40, and we'll get ready to get us on out of here. Another great episode.
Thank you.
No problem.